Some people are just filing in. Our last session is literally just over, so people are going to find their link for this session and come and join us. So that's why it's taken a few extra minutes. But Jonny, we are absolutely thrilled to have you here with us today. Thank you so very much. You and I have got to know each other a little bit over the last couple of years, maybe more than a couple of years, quite a few years actually. And we're really thrilled that you're here today. You are both an author and journalist based here in Northern Ireland, and you have been the author of a really popular blog here called What's a Daddy For?
Yes.
I know recently you have just changed jobs, so I am hopefully going to get it right when I say that you're now with PA News. Is that correct?
I start with PA News next week on Monday, so I'm in the transition period. Exciting times.
Oh, brilliant. And you're also author of a brand new book, and you can tell us a little bit about that, Afraid of the Dark, and we're going to hear a lot about that as we go through. But if you're happy enough, I'll hand over to you to share something, and then if there are any questions that come into the question and answer, we can chat through those together. But Jonny, if you're okay, I'll hand over to you now. So thank you so much for joining us.
No problem, Lindsay. First, just start by saying thanks very much for having us today. It's a great delight and honour to be asked to speak, and I'm very happy to do that. What I'm planning, I'm just going to tell a little bit about myself quickly. Then I've written a little article for the conference, which I call Writing for Therapy. Which is basically sort of how I've used writing to sort of come to terms with some of my mental health issues. And then I'm going to read a short extract from my book, as mentioned, which we'll talk a little bit about. And then I suppose we'll see how we're doing for time. If any questions or anybody wants to shout at me or laugh at me, I'm happy to accommodate that afterwards. So as Lindsay says, my name's Jonny McCambridge. I'm a journalist and author based in Northern Ireland, live in Hillsborough. In 2013, my son was born. At the time, I was deputy editor of the Belfast Telegraph newspaper, so it was quite a high-profile executive role in the largest newspaper in Northern Ireland. Happily married, newborn baby, great house, great job, great life, everybody thought. Within 4 months, I was a patient in a psychiatric ward in my local hospital. And it came as such a shock, not only to myself, but probably more to everybody who knew me. And they said, how could this happen to you? You were the guy we thought who had everything. And really, it was, as often as in the case with mental health, what people saw on the outside wasn't what happened on the inside. And the truth was, I had battled mental health issues for probably most of my adult life: severe depression, anxiety, and I suppose as I became more and more successful as a journalist and became more and more working in a high pressure environment, some of my symptoms became more and more acute. And then after my son was born, I suppose it became just one more thing, and at that time, one thing too many. And I ended up, as I say, basically I was put into hospital for my own protection. I came out, tried to restart my career, battled on for a couple of years, had a second breakdown in 2016. At that time, made a decision that I was going to have to do something radical, so I gave up work, walked away from this high-powered media career that I'd been building for 25 years. And I lived a life of a stay-at-home daddy. My little boy was just starting nursery school at the time. So I moved from this life of budgets and deadlines and rotas into one of baking birthday cakes and kids' parties and bouncing on bouncy castles, going to play parks, etc., and used that, I suppose, as part of my journey to help myself come to terms with my own mental health issues. I was always creative, so around that time, it's 2017, I think, I launched the blog What's a Daddy For, which is how I got to know Lindsay. And it was basically sort of told of my adventures with me and my son. And then I started, Lindsay, I remember, encouraged me at the time to start writing about mental health. So I did that. And that started off a whole new adventure for me. One of the things I discovered is what I'm going to talk a lot about today is how the writing, as well as the parenting side of things, helped me to come to terms. And actually, I used it as a form of therapy. That eventually expanded into a book, which is Afraid of the Dark, which I'll talk a little bit about as we go. And then as I suppose, started to recover, started to come to terms with anxiety, depression, then I was able to return to my media career. And as I say, I'm just about to start a new job next week. And I've got an unexpected visitor who wants to say hello. This is my son, James, who is now.
Hi, James. Hello. Oh, it's so nice to see you. I've met you before, actually. You might not remember, but I have met you before. How are you doing? And if other people are saying hello, lovely to see you.
Right, are you okay, buddy? So Daddy's got a wee bit of a talk to do here, and I'll be in 10 minutes, okay? Good boy. You close the wee door. There you go. So that's
lovely. Oh.
It works. Excuse me, I'm just going to close this door. I'll be 1 second.
Of course, yes, no problem.
Sorry about that, folks.
Oh no, it's lovely to see you.
That's nice. So as I say, guys, what I'm going to do, I've written this little article. I call it Writing for Therapy, which is by Jonny. That's me. It's quite self-explanatory. So I'm just going to read this, and then say after that I'll maybe talk a little bit about my book. But I'll do this first. So, writing for therapy. In a complicated world, there are few things as complex, as saturated with hidden mysteries, uncharted depths, and unexpected turns as a human mind. And so it follows that when something goes wrong with that mind, finding a straight path back to peace and contentment can often prove frustratingly difficult. This was the case in my long struggle with the debilitating impact of mental illness. Depression and anxiety had been with me for so long that I came to accept the normal as routine, that the darkness was just as much a part of me as my grey hair. My understanding of the world included relentless thoughts of how I would end my existence within it. The penance for such a condition was severe. It included a stay in hospital where I was treated as a suicide risk, and where a nurse woke me up several times each night by shining a torch into my face to ensure that I was still alive. Depression also destroyed my career in journalism and put unbearable strains on my family life. On the worst days, I found it impossible to summon the strength and will just to get out of bed. Throughout it all, an array of medical professionals gamely tried to help me. I was prescribed countless antidepressants as doctors searched like alchemists for the elusive combination of chemicals which would correct what had gone awry within my brain. Many hours were spent in therapy, talking to psychiatrists and counsellors about the origins of my problems. Cognitive behavioural therapy taught me to think in a different way, rewiring my thoughts like an electrical plug. Mindfulness taught me to pay more attention to my feelings and the world around me and leave less room for the thoughts which terrified me. All of these treatments were valuable to me and helped knock the rough edges off some of my desperation. On occasional dark days, the simple fact I had someone to talk to, some level of human contact and empathy, was enough to pull me back from a dangerous place. But throughout it all, I could never quite shake the feeling that none of it was helping me to get better, that I hadn't yet made my great leap forward. In 2016, my illness forced me to abandon life as a working journalist and take on a new role as a stay-at-home daddy. When my son was in school, I found, for the first time in decades, I had time on my hands. On one such day, I was having a conversation with an author who suggested that I should try writing about what goes on in my head. Like all the best ideas, it was so obvious that I couldn't believe that it had never occurred to me before. I'd always thought of myself as a writer, even if nobody else did, and this was to be my subject. The process turned out to be revelatory for two reasons. First, turning my thoughts into a narrative enabled me to understand them better. It brought some coherence to the messy pulp of fears, despondency, and projections of catastrophe were swirled inside my mind. More, I found that when the darkness became black words on a white page, it lost much of its hold over me. I became less scared of myself and even learned to laugh at some of my afflictions. Secondly, I discovered the wonderful solidarity of shared experience. I was unsure about going public with my writing at first. There was a long way to go in erasing the social stigma around mental illness, and I knew that once I took that step, I would forever be known as the guy with depression. Instead, the response was overwhelmingly positive. apart from a few social media trolls who labelled me the little snowflake. What I was unprepared for was a flood of respondents who would contact me to tell me they had been through the same thing. I'd always assumed I was a man apart, that my thoughts and fears were individual to me. Now I was dealing with scores of correspondences about careers and marriages wrecked, and occasionally lives lost due to depression. The benefit of the contact for all was obvious. The load becomes that much lighter when it is shared among so many. This started a process that led to me writing my book, Afraid of the Dark. It tells my story, how through finding new meaning in my role as a father and by chronicling my experiences, I was able to heal my shattered nerves and discover a previously unknown joy in life. Writing did not heal me, but it did spark a process of reflection and discovery, which led to a vital realization. I love myself enough to stay alive. I began this article by commenting on the individuality of the mind. What works for me may not do so for another. We all have to discover our own unique path to better mental health. That's a conundrum. But in my case, being able to write about the very worst of me may prove to be the best thing I will ever do. So that, as I say, is a little article that I've written trying to explain, as I said, how I used writing to try and understand depression. One of the things I'm always careful to say whenever I talk about depression and anxiety is that I'm not better. I don't think there is a cure as such. What I've learned to do is how to manage it, to accept. Whenever I was younger, I refused to I suppose partly because I was a Northern Ireland man, I refused to accept what was going on in my head. I tried to ignore it. I tried to shut it out. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't share what was going on with any friends or family. So whenever I did actually become really, really sick, it was such a shock to so many people. And I suppose the one thing I learned was that just by being able to communicate, whether it's through writing or talking or doing things like this, it made me feel so much better about myself. You had that great sense of empathy whenever you spoke to other people. All of those feelings you had that I was unique and a freak, if you want to put it that way, none of those existed in the same way. I still have depression. I still have anxiety, and some days you never know when it's going to come, and some days it can take the littlest thing that triggers it. But what I do know is that I've been through it now so many times, and I know that I've got the good base around my life, the good things around me, that I can always come through it. And I always know there's a better day coming. So I'm just going to talk briefly about my book. So it's called Afraid of the Dark. It's available now via Amazon. I started this a few years ago. I was always, I suppose, my ambition. I wanted to write a book, although I had no real knowledge of doing it. But whenever I started doing the blog, I built up this massive bank of stories and articles, and I was putting it online, and I got contacted by an agent who liked what we were doing, and we sort of put our heads together and decided we would try and turn my story into a book. Since it's been published, I've just recently I've finished work on my first novel, which I'm hoping to publish next year. It will also be about mental health, and I'm started work on my second novel, which will also have mental health as a theme. Just everything I write always seems to end up coming back to that. As I say, it's sort of become my thing. So what I'm going to do, Lindsay, if it's okay, I'm just going to write a short bit from the book. Hopefully that won't bore people too much. I'm trying to think what piece to read. So I've settled on this. Just to give it its context, I remember whenever I was doing the blog, I was contacted at one point by this blogging organization who were asking different writers to write a letter to themselves, and they asked me will I contribute. And I thought it was such a good idea. And it was particularly relevant for me, someone who's been on this journey, that if you could go back to yourself when I was, 18 or 19, and tell yourself what you now know, would your life be different, or would it be the same? But anyway, so I wrote this piece, and I liked it so much I ended up including it in the book. It's in the final chapter. So this is Jonny McCambridge's letter to himself as a younger man, and it goes like this. I sound like a musician there. It goes like this. Anyway, dear Jonny, Knowing you as I do, I'm sure you will be rather chuffed to receive a written letter. It may be hard to imagine, but this form of communication will become rare in future years. It is all instant and impersonal these days: texts, emails, and social media. I've no doubt you would love me to tell you that you will get the hang of it all, but we both know what you are like with technology. I imagine you will have many questions about me, and that's okay. I don't have time here to answer them all, but maybe we can keep talking and work it all out as we go. I'd like that a lot. I will settle now for telling you that I've been asked to write this letter because I do a bit of blogging these days. I know you won't yet understand what that means, and even if I explained it, you wouldn't believe it. Of course, the first question is, which younger version of Jonny should I be addressing this letter to? Should it be the scared kid who uses wit and humour to cover up crippling fear? The successful journalist who lost his way in a ruthless profession? No, I'm thinking of the day when you, the younger Jonny, might need a letter from me the most. The day when you just couldn't see the point anymore and decided it was too hard to go on. I don't need to go into specifics. We both know the day I'm talking about. Now, I suppose you're hoping that I will tell you that it's all going to be okay, that it gets easier, that you work it all out at some point and reach that place of serenity and peace that you have always dreamed about. The problem is, Jonny, and I'm actually crying for you as I write this, it doesn't. The truth is that it will always be this hard for you. The fear and anxiety, the suffocation of depression will always be there. I'm so sorry to have to tell you this, but that's just the way your mind works. And I'm sorry for another reason too. I'm sorry that I didn't know back then how to be kinder to you or have any useful way of helping you. I'm sorry that I was so hard on you all the time. I'm afraid I just didn't know how to love you. And that will always be my deepest regret. But there is something else that I really want you to know. And that is that someday you will have a family all of your own. You will meet a wonderful girl and get married. It will take a lot of time, but you will eventually admit to her what goes on in your head. And guess what? She will still love you anyway. And you will realize how many years were wasted keeping it all wrapped up. And then there is your future son, the other main reason I'm writing to you today. Your beautiful boy who will change everything the first time you hold his writhing little body in your arms and he peers angrily at you. Get used to that look. You're going to see a lot more of it over the years. You and he will learn together and both stumble repeatedly along the way. At times you will be crushed by the awe-inspiring responsibility of trying to raise and shape another human being. In some ways, it will take you still further away from normal society because you will never quite shake that early wide-eyed amazement of what you're doing. You'll never lose that desire to go up to total strangers in the street, grab them and yell, "Look at my son, isn't he just wonderful?" When people ask you what you do, your first answer will always be the same: I'm a father. But there will be many more bad days. I'm afraid to tell you this, but some of them will be worse than you have yet known. The biggest challenges are still to come. But here is a thing you really need to remember. When they come, you will have your family to help you through them. When it is really bad, you will not be alone. When the night is at its deepest, there will be three in the bed, and there will always be loving arms stretching out to hold you in the dark. I suppose it is what you and I have always been searching for, a reason for it all. It is a place which feels like home. You will also learn that there's no universal path or method which leads you away from despair and towards contentment. There are many different ways of finding refuge in this battle, and each person has to find out what works best for them as individuals. When it comes to dealing with mental illness, the closest thing to an absolute truth you will discover is the undeniable power and benefit of talking about it, how much lighter the burden will feel when you share it with another. In your own way, by choosing to write and talk about your story publicly, you will perhaps play a tiny part in helping to dispel the stigma which hinders recovery for so many. I hope you will agree that this is a pretty good reason to stay alive. The problem with writing letters is knowing how to finish, how to find a neat way of summing up all that has gone before. How about this? You will have a family that you love. They will also love you, but more importantly, because of them, You will learn to love yourself. Take care, Jonny. I love you so much. I'm sorry it took me so many years to say it. There we go.
Oh, Jonny, that was so unbelievably powerful. There are so many messages that you'll want to take when you're ready to take a chance to have a wee look at in the chat. But that is absolutely incredible. I strongly recommend to people to go and to have a look and buy your book. It is stunning, and obviously you write so well, so raw and so honest, and we really appreciate you sharing that with us. Are you okay?
I'm okay. So I'll tell you, I've done this. I've read this passage about 20 times, and every time I do it, I say to myself, "You're going to get through it this time without crying." And I haven't managed it yet, but someday I will. You know, think I don't know. It's all so raw, and you know, I suppose it's part of the process of bearing your soul and being able to, you know, 5 years ago I wouldn't have been able to do that. I wouldn't have been able to speak to people in that way. Now I just say that's me, and that's how I am, and you know, that's what's important to me. So I do it. No, I'm kind of, I might not look like it, but I'm actually feeling really good.
That's good. We just wanted to check. I mean, I think it was in the first piece that, I mean, all it was amazing. It was the first piece that you read out. I wrote down the line, "I loved myself enough to stay alive." And I think that is hugely powerful. And I think that letter is very powerful because you do talk about the idea of learning to love yourself, which is something we don't talk enough about at all, and particularly in Northern Ireland, with how we are not very good about talking about anything sometimes, particularly the things that really matter.
Absolutely. And I mean, that is probably, if there was one revelation or one thing at that, is, I mean, I've always loved my family. I've always loved the people around me. My friends. The one person I didn't love, and the one person I actually for a long time thought very little of was myself. And that has been, I suppose, the culmination of the journey I was on, is actually realizing how much I mean to myself. And you know, that has to be your starting point, Lindsay. And once you get that, then you know, everything seems a little bit better.
Yeah. And how do you even practically day to day, like, live out that loving yourself? What does that look like? 'Cause again, it's a phrase we might use quite quickly, but we don't always think what's behind it. So what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, I suppose, I mean, part of it is as a creative for me. It's a creative side. It's writing pieces like that. You know, I write my column in the newsletter, but it's you know, more important than it's just, I suppose, having my family around me, bringing balance to my life. Because what I did before was I would just throw myself into work, and I use that as a crutch, and as a way of trying to, I suppose, keep myself from the worst excesses of my own personality. No, I don't do that. Now I work a lot. I work when I can. I try my best. You know, I leave it. I give myself time. I have time with my family. You know, I just try and find more balance in my life and enjoyment in the things that I do. And you know, that is everything to me. And as I say, I've got, you know, but it still remains, because you know, I'm starting this new job next week. I know it's going to be really busy. Next week's going to be such a busy news week, and I'm going to be right in at the deep end again. And you know, but I pick up what I've learned along the way. So I'm jumping back into this news environment, but I'm wiser and I'm better. I might not be quite as good a journalist as I used to be. I'm probably a better dad and a better man. And you know, I'm just going to try and you know, keep the balance as best I can.
Fantastic. And so we've had a number of, we have obviously have mums who've had lived experience here today, and we've heard quite a bit about that throughout the day. But for any of us who work alongside men and dads, and what advice would you give us about helping males to speak up about how they're feeling or when they're struggling? Because sometimes it's knowing what to say or what to do or what to ask we can feel powerless about knowing how to help. So what advice would you have around that?
I suppose it's awareness, isn't it, Lindsay? And it's knowing it shouldn't be, but it seems harder for men to speak out. It's hard for everybody to speak out. And in my instance, you know, after our son was born, my wife, I know she wouldn't mind me saying this, but she suffered from postnatal depression. And I felt at that time that I needed to be the strong one. You know, I had to be the rock. And I just wasn't, you know, when I knew that I was falling apart and my behavior was becoming erratic, I just didn't feel it was an option for me to speak out about it, because I thought, you know, I'm the rock. I'm the one that has to keep the family together. I have to keep work together. So I suppose it's a challenge for all of society, families, mums, dad, to make sure we're all in that position where we can be comfortable speaking out. And if it's harder for men because of our background or whatever, then that's so be it. But we all just have to be aware that everybody has those issues. And the thing I always say, Lindsay, and I know I've said it to you so many times, is that you just don't know. And I'm the prime example of that, because whenever I end up having my first breakdown, as people said to me, you're the last man in the world. You had everything. You're the guy who had everything. That this could not have happened. Some people couldn't believe it. They just said it's just too much for us to come to terms with. And I would say, look, that tells you something. If it happens to me, everybody is vulnerable.
Yeah. No, that's really important. Jonny, thank you so much. I do want you to get a chance to have a look through those comments, so maybe have a read while I do a bit of chatting. But there are so many beautiful comments in there for you, which you absolutely deserve, about the wonderful writer that you are, about how honest you've been, and how you really opened this up. And I know that people have said in there that they're going to go and buy your book. So guys, I know it's on Amazon for sure. So if you want to go and have a look on Amazon for Afraid of the Dark, you'll be able to buy it there. We are unbelievably thankful to Jonny for coming along and speaking to us, especially whenever you are starting the new job next week and you've got so much to probably try and juggle.
I was more than happy. It's been a highlight of my week, and I've really looked forward to it, and it's been a joy to speak to everybody.
Oh, thank you so very much. And all the panelists are saying exactly the same thing, or the attendees, sorry. Thank you so much for coming along. You have really ended the day for me. This is absolutely amazing. You're the final talk that I've got to listen to, and you're what I am going to take away now from this whole day. This has been an absolute highlight for me personally, and thank you for that, Jonny. I am going to end our session now. So for all our attendees, this was our final session of the day, except for the opportunity to come and hear Michelle and I for just a final few minutes for some end of day remarks. So if you'd like to do that, your final Zoom link should be in your inbox to go and click that and to come and join Michelle and I just to finish off our conference day. But again, thank you so much, Jonny, and thank you to everybody who has attended. And I'm sure Amazon is going to see a spike in the sales of your book after that. Thank you for everything. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
See you all again. Bye-bye.